Chu Sheng. In other words, at the age of 16 or 17, Chen Xiaolian of Shuntian province followed a priest to study at a monastery. There were many students, one of them, a student named Chu, who claimed to be a native of Shandong province, and worked hard to study, and did not rest for a moment. And the classmate was housed in school and never saw him go home once. Mr. Chen wanted him best, so he was asked why he did not come home. Chu replied, "My family is poor and it is not easy to raise tuition fees. If I can't cherish every inch of time, if I add half a night every day, I can match 3 other people's 3 days in 2 days." Chen Sheng was moved by his words and wanted to move into the bed with him. Chu discouraged him from saying, "For the time being, don't do it. I can no longer see Mr. Wang's learning as our teacher. There is a Mr. Liu at Fucangmen who, although very old, can be our teacher. Please come with me to his place to study." Most of the private juices in Beijing used to charge monthly tuition fees. At the end of the month, the students can stay or leave as they wish. Therefore, Chen and Chu went to see Mr. Liu together. Mr. Liu, a famous judging reader, was unable to return to his hometown because of poverty and had to teach children to live on enlightenment, which was not his ambition. So he was very happy after he got Chen and Chu. Chu Sheng is also very smart. He can understand it when he reads a book, and Mr. Liu is especially important to him. Chen and Chu were very close, and they studied together at the same table during the day and slept together at night. At the end of the month, Chu Sheng suddenly took a leave of absence and returned for more than 10 days. Everyone felt strange. One day, Chen Sheng came to Tianning Temple for something, and met Chu Sheng under the gallery. He was dipping Kingma pitching small strip in sulfur to make the fire-sparking appliance. After meeting Chen Sheng, Chu Sheng looked ashamed. "Why did you suddenly stop reading?" Mr. Chen asked. Chu Sheng held Chen Sheng's hand and invited him aside. "It was sad to say, because our family has no money to pay for Mr. Chen's education. We must do business for half a month so as to read a month's book." Chen lamented for a long time, saying, "If you go back to school, I will help you as best I can." They asked the servants to pick up Chu's tools and returned to school together. Chu Sheng instructed Chen Sheng not to disclose the matter, but to tell Mr. Chen for a reason. Chen Sheng's father was a businessman with a shop and made his fortune by trading. Chen Sheng often stole his father's money and paid tuition fees for Chu Sheng. Chen Fu asked Chen Sheng for losing the money, and Chen Sheng told him the truth. Father Chen thought Chen was a nerd and told him to stop. Chu Sheng is ashamed. "Ask your teacher to leave." Mr. Liu, knowing why, reproached him, "If you were so poor, why didn't you tell me?" He returned all the money to Chen's father, leaving Chu to study as usual, eat with him and treat him like his own son. Although Chen stopped studying at the University of Education, he often invited Chu to join him in the hotel for drinks. Chu Sheng refused to go in order to avoid it, but Chen Sheng invited him to become more determined, and often shed tears. Chu Sheng couldn't bear to refuse him, so he kept talking with Chen. After 2 years, Chen Sheng's father died, and Chen Sheng asked to study with Mr. Liu again. Mr. Liu was moved by his sincerity. "I took him, but Chen Sheng has been out of school for a long time compared to Chu Sheng's big gap." Half a year later, Mr. Liu's eldest son went from Zhejiang province to Beijing to find his father. The students collected some money for Mr. Liu's trip home, but Mr. Chu was only in tears. When Mr. Liu said goodbye, he told Mr. Chen to treat Chu Sheng as his own teacher. Chen Sheng agreed and asked Chu Sheng to live in his home and become his own teacher. After a short time, Chen Sheng took the Xiucai examination and participated in the countryside examination as a survivor subject. Worried that he could not finish his essay, Mr. Chen volunteered to take the exam instead. On the date of the country trial, Chu brought a man, who said he was his cousin, Liu Tianruo, and told Chen to follow him temporarily. Chen Sheng had just left the house, and Chu Sheng suddenly pulled him from the back. Chen Sheng almost fell down, and Liu Tianruo scurried him away with him. After a short stroll, they stayed at Mr. Liu's home together. The Liu family had no women, so he let his guests stay in the inner yard. "I stayed for a few days and I didn't realize Mid-Autumn Festival. Today, Li Huangqin's garden is full of tourists, so we should also go soothe their worries and send you home, Liu said. So Ms. Liu asked Mr. Ma to pick out the cook and the distillery. I saw the staircase in the water, the plum pavilion, the noise, the inaccessibility. After walking past a sluice gate, they see a picture shop lying across the old willow tree. And they walk each other onto the boat. The two were drunk and lonely. There are new prostitutes at the Plum Blossom Garden recently. Are you not at home? Mr. Liu said, reaching out to the bookseller. After a short visit, Xu Huan returned with a woman. It turned out that Li Yuyan, a prostitute from Beijing, wrote well and sang well. Mr. Chen had been drinking with friends at her home, so he knew her. The two met, with a little greeting. Li looked sad. When Ms. Liu asked her to sing, she sang an Artemisia. Even if you are not satisfied with our host and guest, you will not be able to sing an elegy to the living person, Mr. Chen said ruefully. Li stood up to apologize, barely smiled, and sang a lyrically colorful song. Grabbing Li's wrist, Chen was delighted to say, I've read the words you used to write Raccoon Creek yarn several times, and now I've forgotten them. Li intoned. Tears were pouring against the stage. The curtain was opened and the end came, looking down at the bow's shoes. To make the moth happy, to wipe the red sleeves with gills, to be careful, to be guest. Mr. Chen chanted it several times. In a moment, the boat docked. As they made their way ashore and across the promenade, Mr. Chen picked up his pen to write the word raccoon scarf on the wall, seeing the poems on the wall. It was late afternoon, and Mr. Liu said, people in the examination room are coming out. I'll send Chen home. When Mr. Chen entered the house, Mr. Liu said goodbye. Chen saw that the room was dark and deserted. After a little hesitation, Chu Sheng had already walked into the door, and he had a close look at it, but he was not Chu Sheng. In the middle of his confusion, the man suddenly approached him and fell. The servant said, "The boy is tired." Chen felt that it was not someone else who fell, but himself. When he got up, he saw Chu standing next to him, and he was in a trance as if in a dream. Don't be surprised to tell you, I'm a ghost, and I should have been born and reborn a long time ago, Chu said. So the reason to delay here is because you can't forget your deep affection for me. So attached to you in order to take your place in the country trials. Now that the 3 exams are over, my wish is over. Mr. Chen then asked him to take his place at the meeting. Your father was a blessed man, Chu said. He could not bear the glory of freeing him to save the bones of a stingy man. Chen Sheng asked, where will you go? Chu Sheng said, Mr. Liu and I have a father-son relationship. I often hang onto my heart and cannot forget. My cousin was in charge of the books in the penitentiary, and I begged him to intercede with the prefect or to be hopeful of being his son. So I said goodbye. Chen thought this was strange, and went to visit Li Ji after tomorrow to ask about the boat and the lake, but Li Ji had been dead for days. He went back to Mr. Li's garden, where the self-titled lyrics to Raccoon Creek Vale on the gallery wall were still muted and blurry, as if they were about to be extinguished. That's when it became clear that the poem was written by her own soul, and that the lyricist Li was a ghost. In the evening, Chu came with a great deal of joy, saying, what I asked for was a blessing and a success, and now I'm going to bid you farewell. So he reached out and asked Chen to write the word Chu in his hand as a sign. If you don't forget our old friendship, and after your countryside tries to send out the list, don't be afraid to visit me in Zhejiang because of the long and arduous road. Chen Sheng brought him to tears, and saw a person waiting outside the door, and Chu Sheng was still longing. This person pressed Chu Sheng's head by hand, and Chu Sheng became flat with his hand. The man held Chu up and put him in a pocket and took him away with his back. A few days later, Chen Sheng duly took the exam. So Ji prepared his clothes for Zhejiang. Mr. Liu's wife, who had been childless for decades and was in her 50s, suddenly gave birth to a boy whose hands were clasped tightly and could not be extended. Mr. Chen arrived at Liu's home and asked to see the children, saying there must be a Chu in his palm. Mr. Liu doesn't believe me. When the child saw Chen Sheng, his fingers automatically spread out. When he looked at his palm, he wrote Chuan Chand. When people asked about the cause in surprise, Chen told them about it. People love and ender. Mr. Chen gave Mr. Lu a generous sum of money before quitting home. Later, Mr. Lu, qualified as Suigong, went to Beijing to take a trial and stayed at Chen's home. Mr. Lu's youngest son was 13 years old and had already finished the exam.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.